The Stars have cap issues. The Sharks have an abundance of cap space. Can big money Mike swing a deal?
You're Locked On Sharks, your daily podcast on the San Jose Sharks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Sharks, the premier hockey podcast covering your favorite team in the Bay Area. My name is JD Young, caretaker at the Reef, also the co-host of Locked On NHL. I want to thank you for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Proudly part of the Locked On Network, we cover your team every day. And if you want to be an everydayer, all you have to do is just follow along wherever you get podcasts, or you can watch on YouTube as well. And today we're going to be examining the Dallas Stars issue, as there is a lot of stuff. We'll say there's a lot of smoke coming from Dallas. And if the Sharks can maybe take advantage of it, we're going to be looking at Jason Robertson, who may be on the trade block, and then look at three players who I think to a varying level of degrees would make sense for the San Jose Sharks to acquire, and Mason Marchment, Matt Dumba, and Ilia Lyubushkin. So before we look at all these guys, do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Okay. Let's start with where the Stars are at, right? And I think that's kind of the big story and why we're starting to kind of see this, right? Of course, the Stars who've been to the Western Conference Finals a bajillion times in a row, have lost now a bajillion times in a row, because that is what Pete DeBoer does, are in a very tough spot when it comes to the cap. They have $4.9 million in cap space with 16 players signed. Of course, they don't have their first round pick this year. They don't have a second round pick this year. They don't have a first round pick in 26. This is very much an all in type of team. This naturally leads to, well, how are the Stars going to make cap space, right? You just traded for Mikko Rantanen. You gave him a big deal in 8 years at $12 million. And Mikko Rantanen, pretty good player, right? Definitely worth his contract. At least that's the hope, right? If you're a Stars fan. But this team, you have a lot of guys who are coming off the books. Jamie Benn, Matt Duchene, Dadonov, Mikael Granlund, Colin Blackwell, all UFAs. They have eight player forwards under contract right now. Last time I checked, you needed 12. They have 6 defensemen on the books, and they have Brendan Smith, Cody Ceci, both coming off. And then you have an RFA and Niels Lundqvist, who needs a new contract. Like, this team needs, they need to kind of sign some players. And that's where I think the Jason Robertson thing comes in, right? And what the Stars need to do, right, is try to free up some cap space so they can retool this thing, and try to make another run at this, right? Especially because you just traded for an extended Mikko Rantanen. You have Wyatt Johnson, who's 22. You have, you just re-signed Jake Ottinger to a long-term deal. Like, this team is kind of going to have to try to reconfigure its identity. And Jason Robertson is your best asset if you do want to trade him, because one, he's very good, and two, his contract's very palpable for teams. At 1 year at $7.75 million, and he's an RFA who's probably going to need a raise in the 26-27 season. So before we talk about why it would make sense, let's kind of dive into what Jason Robertson is. So just in case you don't know, maybe you just follow the Sharks. We like to, again, want to make sure we're well-rounded and get you covered here. So Jason Robertson, 25, turns 26 here in a couple weeks. 6'3", 207 pounds. Former first-round pick of the Dallas Stars. This year played 82 games, had 35 goals, 45 assists, 211 shots on goal while playing a hair under 18 minutes a night. Of course, he forced it when he was on the ice. The Stars took 49.91% of the shot attempts, goals for. So when he was on the ice, they scored 56.36% of the goals at 5-on-5. Jason Robertson is a former two-time 40-goal scorer. The dude can put the puck in the back of the net. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it until the Sharks change. The Sharks suck at scoring goals. Jason Robertson would be very good at scoring goals. Not the greatest playoffs from Robertson, who got hurt the very last game of the season, missed some time before kind of coming back. And he had 6 points in 11 games, including 4 goals in those 11 games, but still was definitely coming off an injury. The previous years, he's had some pretty solid playoff performances, including last year we had 16 points in 19 games, including 6 goals and 10 assists. And the year before that, he had 18 points in 19 games, including 7 goals and 11 assists. So he's been usually a pretty solid playoff performer during that time, kind of flirting around a point per game. And this year, again, dealing with an injury, you're willing to kind of give him a little bit of grace, at least when it comes to, at least I am in that perspective. So looking at Robertson, kind of some of his analytics here, 98th percentile player playing first line minutes, 97th percentile offense, just drives like goals. Defense is okay, but again, you're not paying Jason Robertson to play defense. You're paying him to score goals. And that's what Jason Robertson does. Over the past 3 seasons, 98th percentile WAR player, insane offense, great on the power play, great score, whatever. It plays against tough team competition. Jason Robertson is a dude. He's a star player. He's also a Dallas Star. That's a joke. Looking at what he does very well, he drives offense very well. Maybe not the strongest of forecheckers, but again, Jason Robertson has a role. And his role is to put the puck in the back of the net. Dude does that very, very well. And, looking at his usage, he actually gets tough competition and doesn't really get as many offensive zone starts that you would expect for a guy of Jason Robertson's caliber. He actually spends more time in the defensive zone when it comes to zone starts anyway. But great, again, this is a guy who former first round pick, top 10, not a first round pick, second round pick, in the 2017 draft. So a guy who's well performed, outperformed expectations, right? And this is a dude who scores, 2 years of 40 goals, this year at 35 goals. In even last year, what was a down year, put up 29 goals and 80 points in 82 games and been relatively healthy for the most part, relatively healthy guy for the most part. When it comes to game, you're going to get him basically every night. So does it make sense for the Sharks? 100%. Yes, it makes sense for the Sharks to go out and acquire a guy like Jason Robertson and his skills, because again, 40 goal scorers just don't grow on trees. He is excellent. He would fit the Sharks timeline of being 25, turning 26. If you put him with a guy like Macco Celebrini, he would continue to score a bajillion goals. He would 100% make a lot of sense for the San Jose Sharks to acquire. The problem is, I don't know if it makes sense from the Dallas perspective to trade him to the San Jose Sharks. Because from Dallas's point, yes, you're trying to clear some cap space so you can go out and do whatever. Sign your own players, sign new players, whatever you're trying to do. The Sharks just don't have stuff that Dallas wants, at least especially for Jason Robertson, right? And the thinking is, I would assume, if you trade Jason Robertson, you're probably trying to do like what the Panthers did a few years ago, right? Where you just realize the dudes I have just aren't the dudes I need to kind of get over the hump, right? And then they traded Huberdeau and then traded Mackenzie Weegar for Matthew Tkachuk because they needed an identity change. Who on the Sharks are the Stars going to be like, that's the guy I want? That you're going to trade? Like, of course, I'm sure they would be happy to get a guy like Macklin Celebrini, right? They'd be happy to get a guy like Will Smith. But again, that doesn't make sense from the Stars' perspective. Because like this is a team that wants to continue to win, right? And try to win. Because again, like because of the moves they just made. So as great as I think it would be to potentially add Jason Robertson because he's a really great player, I just don't think at least a trade with the Sharks makes sense because the Sharks just don't have stuff the Stars would want. And maybe they do want to get some picks back and some cap space and stuff like that, which I could get, and the Sharks have that. But I think if you're trading Jason Robertson, I think it's going to be more of a hockey trade, just like we saw with Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar going to Calgary and Matthew Tkachuk coming back because the Panthers just didn't like the DNA of their team. So as great as it sounds, I just don't foresee it coming. Now, there are other ways, which I think Dallas, if I was a Dallas GM or like it, ways where I think they can kind of trim some fat, maybe not fat, but look at other areas of the roster where maybe they can try to move on from players, get some stuff back, and or maybe just salary cap dump some players. So that's what we're going to start to explore here in just 1 second. And where areas where I do think Mike Grier should be interested. So we'll get to that in just 1 second. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? And if you're like me, just trying to buy snacks for your children, and oh my gosh, summer is coming, and I don't know. It's easy to lose track where your money goes. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. All right, before we continue, we talk about Mason Marchment. Do, of course, want to thank you guys for making Locked On Sharks your first listen. Again, proudly part of the Locked On Network. We cover your team every day. If you haven't yet, perfect time to subscribe as we continue to get you ready for both the draft and free agency. We have more draft profiles coming next week. We continue looking at free agent, potential free agents for the Sharks, and gear up with a simulated offseason coming the week before the draft. So make sure you follow along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. So we don't like Dallas, right? They got to try to move off some contracts because, again, you have $5 million and you have to sign seven players. Even if you sign everybody at Vetmin, like you're not going to fit everybody in, right? So Mason Marchment, I think, is a player that makes a lot of sense and hits that Venn diagram of a guy whose contract I think is movable for the Stars, and you can get something back from him. And I believe he is a very, very Mike Grier type of player. So let's get to know Mason Marchment, former, actually just undrafted player. Of course, there are San Jose Sharks connections with him. His dad, Bryant, was a longtime scout who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, right before the draft. So it is something like you're going to have to keep in mind is, this is a kid who grew up around the San Jose, like he knows San Jose, but you do wonder if just the ghost of his dad could be something you have to take into account. Some people, I'd love to see my dad, be reminded of my dad every day. Some people, maybe they don't want to be reminded of their dad every day. Again, don't know. I'm just something you have to keep in mind. But assuming he wants to come, right? Mason Marchment does have ties. He played with Jumbo they were both together on the Florida Panthers. And actually, I believe they're also together on the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. So, but like he has ties to the Sharks with either playing with Jumbo or with again, his dad being a former scout. So undrafted kid, he turns 30 here in a couple weeks. So something to keep in mind. He is a little bit older here. 6'5", 212 pounds, has 1 year left on his deal at $4.5 million. Does it have a 10-team no trade list? So again, don't know if the Sharks are on that trade list or not. Something you do have to keep in mind. This season, though, he 62 games, 22 goals, 25 assists, 134 shots on goal, while playing about 15 and a half minutes. Corsi for 50.12%. Goals for 56.94%. So those are really good numbers, offensive production, especially for his time, right? That's kind of second, kind of middle 6 minutes, which ding, ding, ding. The Sharks need middle six players, good middle six players. Mason Marchment, I would argue, good middle six player. 44th percentile player, kind of in that, second line position. 73rd percentile offense, 17th percentile defense. Played on the power play, not going to give you anything shorthanded, which is fine. Like that's I think there's other players that the Sharks could utilize in that position. WAR, so is at 47%. This really spiked the last 2 years playing where I think kind of clicked for Marchment playing with the Stars. 75 percentile WAR last season. This season, kind of closer to 50%. This was a jump up from 25%. Solid offensively, good at scoring, good at kind of creating those first assists. Takes some penalties, which we know Grier is. I think he'll be okay with that. Plays, solid competition, does have good teammates usually. Guy who drives offense, though. Like, he drives offense. And even if he's not scoring, I think he's a guy who helps to drive offense. And the Sharks, again, need guys to help drive offense. Utilized, kind of got a little bit weaker competition with offensive zone starts, but still like solid. And he did well with his opposition, with kind of where he was at. So this feels very much like a beautiful match from the Sharks perspective of a guy who, again, he's 30, but he's very effective. He's scored, the past 2 seasons, he's had 20 goals a season. Even before that, he put up 12 in what was kind of a down year and 31 points and 68 games. And then the 21-22 season with the Florida Panthers, he had 18 goals, 29 assists, and 47 points. So you're probably going to pencil in, 45 to 50 points from Mason Marchment, which we discussed recently would, that's like top 5 scoring for the San Jose Sharks last year. So, and the Sharks need just more guys who can score goals. So, big thing is, what's it going to cost? And honestly, looking at kind of relatable trades, you look at like Riley Smith, who went to the Penguins, 3rd round pick. That was in 2023. Oliver Bjorkstrand, kind of a similar type of player, went to the Kraken in 2022, 3rd and 4th round pick. So the Sharks have multiple picks, right? The Sharks have 1 3rd round pick, which is the Edmonton pick. So it's end of the 3rd round there. 2 4th round picks, including the Jets pick that they got from the Dallas Stars, and a Blues pick. So maybe you just trade your third round pick, which is the end of the third round, and then and then the Jets pick, which is the end of the fourth round, and you just package those up to go get Mason Marchment, who last year of his deal, right? And then maybe he becomes a trade asset for you at the trade deadline, where you can recoup some of your value back, or you can potentially resign him to a short deal next year if he feels like a fit for you. So I think Mason Marchment is a perfect shark of what Mike Grier wants to build. And if he's available, Mike Grier should do a lot in his power to go out and acquire a guy of Mason Marchment skills, because I think he fits what Grier looks to build in a hockey team. So yeah, and the story is just too good, bringing Mason Marchment back home. So but yeah, we'll look at two guys who I think would be more cap dumps from the Stars perspective, and if the Sharks could maybe get some assets back from them. So we'll get to that here in just 1 second. All right, before we finish up, do of course want to let you guys know about the Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, finishing up here. So two players who I think would potentially be cap dumps, and the Sharks might get something back to take their contracts. One, Matt Dumba, and then the other, Ilia Lyubushkin. Why it would make sense? Let's start with that. Why it would make sense for the Dallas Stars. So the Stars, again, no cap space, $5 million. They're paying both these guys too much money for their production and kind of what they provide. Both these guys kind of playing third pairing minutes. Matt Dumba signed to a 1-year deal at $3.75 million. Ilia Lyubushkin signed to a 2 years at $3.25 million. Both of them are right-handed shots. And from the Stars' perspective, right, the hope is if you can dump their salaries, you can go out and find someone who does 90% of the job at a third of the cost, right? And I go out, maybe sound like a Jan Ruda or like a player like that, right? Where you kind of put them in a third line role. They're not going to kill you. And you're paying them most likely like a vet min type or under $1 million type of contract, instead of two guys who you're paying a combined, $7 million for between Lyubushkin and Dumba. Like $7 million, if you're a team that is supposedly interested in signing Ekblad, $7 million goes a long way in getting Aaron Ekblad if you're the Dallas Stars, right? So I think this is the move that makes the most sense for the Stars, is to try to salary cap dump. Again, the Sharks have $40 million of cap space and have to spend about $20 million just to get to the cap floor. And we know the defense is a hot mess, and both these players aren't going to move the needle defensively. But if you're Mike Grier, you can get yourself a tasty asset. And Dumba, I think, is the one between the two that I would be more interested in. So let's look at Dumba really quick and kind of what he did this year. So Dumba, 6'1", 185 pounds, former first-round pick, age 30, 1 year at $3.75 million. 62 games, 1 goal, 9 assists, 57 shots on goal, playing about 15 minutes a night. Corsi for 51.41, goals for 46.91%. Not the greatest cards, again, for what these guys are playing. Kind of bottom pairing minutes, 12th percentile. But the offense, you can kind of squint and say, like, okay, right? And the Sharks definitely need more right-handed offensive-oriented shots. Dumba, of course, known to make not the smartest plays occasionally. And I'm just trying to be nice there. But I think, though, if you're looking at him, And you look at what the Sharks did last year, and when they acquired Cody Ceci, and the contracts are similar, you can get yourself a 3rd round pick to take on Matt Dumba's contract for a season, and then maybe flip him at the trade deadline again. And you probably have to throw, a contract the other way. Maybe you throw in a cheap, like a Bordelot type of guy, right? RFA, cost controlled, definitely not in the Sharks' future. Here's a guy, maybe he works out for you, maybe he doesn't, right? But the prize is you're getting a 3rd round pick back from the Dallas Stars. Dallas, of course, right? They do have a 3rd round pick this year. Then they don't have a 3rd round pick for a while, so maybe you can push it to a 2nd round pick in the future. Maybe not, but you might have to throw back a little bit extra. Maybe it's a 2nd round pick, but then you're throwing back like a 5th or 4th or a 5th type of thing. So to help kind of even it out a little bit, but that's one option. Ilia Lyubushkin, Lyubushkin, sorry. 6'2", 200 pounds, undrafted, 31. 2 years left at his deal at $3.25 million. 80 games this year, 1 goal, 13 assists, 51 shots on goal. Played a little bit more, about 17 and a half minutes time on ice. 46.56 Corsi for, 50.55 goals for. Looking at his evolving hockey card, again, kind of in that 3rd pairing minutes, 10th percentile. The offense isn't good, but you can kind of look at the defense, be like, okay, we can live with that. Plays on a bunch on the PK. So I think maybe a team might value a little bit more, and maybe you have to pay a very, very little. Maybe it's like a very late round pick type of thing, or maybe you again you're getting something later back because you might have a little bit more perceived value. But the problem is you also just traded for Vinny Desharnais, and they're very similar type of players, right? As big, right-handed, defensive-oriented defensemen. And he has 2 years left on his contract at $3.25 million. So these are if I'm the Stars, right, and I'm trying to clear up my cap space, I think these are the 2 players you look to move first, because I think you can find replacements. Again, you can find someone who does 90% of the job at a 1/3 of the price for both these guys. If you can move both out, $7 million gives you some wiggle room to go do something combined. So $12 million combined cap space gives you a little bit more room to do something. And then you don't have to go trade Jason Robertson. And then if you can trade Marchment and Dumba and Lyubushkin, then you're looking at like $15 million in cap space, which you can go out and be very competitive and do whatever you want to do, again, without having to trade Jason Robertson. So as fun it is to think about Jason Robertson wearing teal, I just don't see it, because I think there's other levers for the Stars to pull, right? And they have some young defensemen like Bichelle, who we know the Sharks were interested in the trade deadline. Niels Lundqvist, too, whatever, but he's a contract that would be cost controlled, who could be a potential, again, I can do the same 90% of the job at a 1/3 of the pay type of player. And then I think it's fun to talk about Robertson. I think Dallas is too smart to just trade away a 40-goal scorer, multi 40-goal scorer. And I think there's other levers for them to kind of pull as they try to get over the hump here, I guess. So, but if you're Mike Grier, I think there's some opportunities to kind of take advantage of a team in a bad situation when it comes to their cap space. And again, if the Sharks could pull off Jason Robertson, just build the freaking statue to Mike Grier without having to give up too much. Just build the statue to Mike Grier, right? But if you get Marchment, and I know he's 30, but if you're looking to if I think the best path for the Sharks to kind of improve a lot this season is just a better play in the middle six, right? And Mason Marchment would provide you much better play in the middle 6 because I think I think he's a Mike Grier type of player. Like he plays hard. He's gonna be like in your face. He gets to the front of the net. Like he's the guy. And I would be more than happy to sling a late 3rd round pick and something else. Again, whether it's a contract or like if it's a kind of borderline NHL, AHL contract type of guy, like a Bordeleau who maybe doesn't fit your timeline, or like just doesn't fit what you're doing, and get Bordeleau in the hands of the Dallas, like the way they develop. And maybe we've seen what Dallas has done with some smaller skilled players. That could be kind of like a nice little win-win type of scenario. And then maybe Bordeleau is on a cheap contract and can kind of play in the NHL there in a different role than what he was expected with the Sharks. And I think maybe both teams kind of walk away happy with that. But so that's the Dallas thing. Don't pre-order your Jason Robertson jerseys yet. So we'll be back tomorrow, though. We're going to be ranking the Sharks prospect pool. We're going to give the top 10 who I think the Sharks 10 best prospects are. So we'll be doing that tomorrow. So make sure you're following along wherever you get podcasts. And of course, you can watch on YouTube as well. Follow the show on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Locked On Sharks. Follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at My Fry Hole. Till tomorrow. Bye, friends.